So we've talked about ethos, pathos, and logos, and kairos, but now is the time to talk about some very concrete ways that you can incorporate these appeals in your own arguments, or you can identify these appeals in other arguments. So if you're looking at ethos, remember that is based on the author's credibility. So to do that, you want to show your audience that you have good intentions, that you are coming from a good place, you're well-meaning. You also want to show them that you have sufficient knowledge to address the subject. So, how to do those two things? There are ways to demonstrate knowledge. One is providing enough information and enough data, so that there is a sufficient amount to prove the point that you're trying to prove. Another one is to show that you're aware of opposing viewpoints, so you have considered them and you do understand them, and you can demonstrate that. You can also show that you're aware of the ongoing conversation about that topic by showing where your argument fits into the ongoing conversation, whether there's a debate between two sides or just sort of an ongoing consideration of the issue. Another way you can demonstrate your knowledge is to follow the conventions of the genre you're writing in. Show that you understand what is expected of a blog post or an academic journal article or a reference article. And of course, using correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar shows that you do have the basic knowledge of the language that you're writing in, and shows also that you understand the subject as well. If you are trying to build trust, there are a few ways you can do that. One way is to maintain a respectful tone. Show that you understand opposing viewpoints. Don't commit that ad hominem fallacy. Don't alienate them. Even if someone agrees with you, they're probably going to be alienated if you attack someone else. Show that you understand your audience's motivations, why your audience wants what they want. Even people who disagree with you probably want the same thing, so maybe they disagree with you on how is the best way to keep our children safe, but they both agree, you and they both agree that we should keep children safe, for example. Make the audience aware of your own motivation. Why do you want what you want? What is the good intention that you have? And you can even show that you have good intentions. You want to make sure that you don't come off as being heavy-handed on that, but, indicate that you just want people to understand something or everyone to be healthy or whatever you're seeking with your argument. You can show that you're invested by carefully proofreading your argument, that you took the time to make it right. Clearly, if you care about something, you're going to take the time to get it right. And, of course, identifying yourself and the source of your information. So taking credit for it, saying this is who to call if something is wrong, more or less. This is mine. I'm going to put my name on it. I'm going to take credit for it. I'm going to be personally invested in it. And, of course, the source of your information, the same thing. So we can check the source of the information so we know whether to respect the source of your information. Pathos is the appeal to emotion. Remember, the emotion that the audience feels. So in order to appeal to pathos, you have to get readers emotionally involved in what you're talking about. You want to attract their attention, be memorable, motivate them to act. And this is something that often appears in the introduction and conclusion of your argument, because it does get attention and make that memorable. So that's a really good place, especially since appeals to pathos in an academic setting are not convincing by themselves. Obviously, we need to have some cold hard facts as well, but that pathos can really get your audience motivated to address the issue in addition to understanding it and agreeing. So how do you do that? One way is to use concrete language. Use specific details that are going to make that situation seem more immediate. So those sense words that you can use, how something looks, sounds, smells, tastes, or feels, those details will make someone feel more like they are embedded in a situation. Make specific examples so it seems real, it seems like something that can really happen, and someone can imagine that situation. You can focus on an individual to make that argument human. So overall, it may not be an issue if it only happens to one person, so you need to give statistics perhaps about how many people something happens to, but tell an individual story. And that will provide interest, that will give you a chance to use that concrete language, that imagery, and it will make it seem really close to you. There's a saying, one death is a tragedy, a million deaths are a statistic. So that's kind of, once we get to numbers that are too big, we don't really comprehend those as humans, not on the same level that we do if we're considering an individual. So you can really engage your audience that way. Choose what terms you're going to use to help shape your reader's response. So you can choose the vocabulary that you're going to use when you talk about something. There's that old example of used cars versus pre-owned cars. They ask for gently loved toys instead of used toys, right? So it sounds a lot nicer. And you can do the same thing. You can choose to use a more volatile term or a nicer term. You can also use comparisons, like metaphors and analogies, to connect to what readers already know, understand, and believe. So elsewhere in the course, I compare formatting your paper correctly to dressing up for a job interview, and how dressing up for a job interview shows that you understand the conventions that are expected of you and care about the situation, just the same way formatting your paper does the same thing. And my hope is that students will be familiar with the concept of dressing correctly for a job interview and therefore understand what I'm trying to communicate about formatting their essays the same way. If you want to appeal to kairos, so show the timeliness of an argument, you can refer to current events that are relevant to your discussion. You might need to provide a historical overview of your topic to show how it's developed over time. You can tell your own reasons for addressing the topic at the moment. So maybe you have a personal reason that made this currently relevant. Maybe you have a child in kindergarten and that's why you're suddenly concerned about kindergartners' homework. Maybe you just started college and that's why you're concerned about the cost of an education. So any of those things. You can also appeal to kairos by indicating the consequences of timely action. So you can tell your readers, here's why we need to act quickly, here's what we'll lose if we delay acting on this, or here's what can be saved or what can be accomplished if we're quick enough. So to kind of give that motivation to your audience. And of course, you don't want to forget appealing to logos, the logic and reason in your argument. This is probably the one that you're going to be doing the most in an academic argument because you are trying to show logically that something is true or works or whatever in an academic setting. Whereas in some other settings, you might be dwelling on some other appeals more. For example, you might be making an impassioned argument that really depends on pathos if you're trying to persuade people to, say, vote a certain way. So if you're appealing to logos, you want to show the path of your reasoning. You want to make connections between your ideas. And this is something that we talk about when we talk about organizing your essay and making sure that you have good topic and concluding sentences always referring back to your thesis. And doing that helps show the progression of your logic and how your ideas connect, and that's one reason why it's so helpful. You also want to consider how you're organizing your ideas. Are you making some sort of logical progression? And often that means either starting with your least convincing point and moving toward your most convincing point, or the opposite, starting with your most convincing point and then filling in some less convincing points. But you want to have an idea of why you're using the organization that you're using. Another way you can do the appeal to logic is to identify the assumed motivation behind your argument. Give support for that if necessary. So that's the assumption that people are going to be swayed by your reason. If we say you should take this action to stop bullying, we're assuming that our audience actually wants to stop bullying. They won't be convinced otherwise. And that's one that probably a lot of people agree with, but your reason may not be something that everyone agrees with. We may have to provide support for it. You can help by defining unfamiliar terms, explaining unfamiliar concepts so that your readers can fully understand what you're talking about. Of course, you want to use as clear and correct a language as possible so your readers can follow your thoughts so they understand the connections. Another way to help yourself remain logical is to stay away from absolutes. So if you say always, never, of course, that's usually not true. You can qualify your claim, so you can say things like in most cases or probably. But you can also limit the situation you're talking about. So instead of saying we should require school uniforms to stop all bullying, you could say public schools should require uniforms to help reduce clothing related bullying. And you're more likely to be able to convince someone of that not weaker claim, but that more specific claim. Those are all ways that you can incorporate the appeals in your own writing, but you can also go back and look for these things in the writing that you are considering. So you can look at how someone is using concrete language to incorporate pathos, or how they are demonstrating the connections between their reasons to appeal to logos, or how they're incorporating current events to appeal to kairos, or how they're showing their own credibility by formatting an argument very well to fit with its genre. Any of those things. And hopefully that helps us get a little bit of a clearer picture of some really specific things that we can be doing and that we can be looking for in arguments.